Hello, Hockey Buzz. How you doing? Buzzards out there, how you doing? What's going on, Russ? Today, I'm sorry I'm from my car, but I am. Here I
That's
am.
all right. Car looks nice.
Yeah, it looks fine.
I want to say that the NFL quarterback position is interesting because I just looked up the average age. Guess what the average age is of an NFL quarterback?
26.
29 to 30. So you're both pretty close.
Yeah.
But yet
Right.
they're drafting guys that are 22, 23.
Right.
So what it tells me is that the teams are drafting these guys, like maybe 2 or 3 make it every year. That's it. And the rest they're getting those recycled guys that are coming from other teams, waiting for other chances, like the Tyrod Taylors, the Justin Fields, guys like that. And it's weird. It's like if you're a team, I'm not even sure why you would even draft a quarterback based on that. Unless you know for sure, like it's a can't miss guy, first or second pick. Like that's changed my opinion. If I didn't have the first
They're interesting. They're interesting I wouldn't do it either. I mean, if you think about it, like a lot of the quarterbacks that have gotten pretty have made it really well in the NFL. Some of them have been like obvious things, like in first round picks, but quite a few of them are not. You know, quite a few of them come from because college football and pro football are such a different game.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's closer than the NHL and junior hockey, but it's still far away.
I don't know if it is because I don't know if it is closer. I would say because I mean, there's such a it's getting closer maybe because there's such a running aspect to playing, you know, college football quarterback.
I think that's true. I mean, I think one of the things is, and again, I'm not a college football guy, but one of the things is there are some programs that run like a pro program, and they say that we run this offense, it's a pro style offense. But I'm assuming it's really probably like 25% of the team.
Yeah, not many, because a lot of them go in like wing tees and all these crazy formations.
Yeah,
that are some of them are very complicated to work, and some of them are. So I've heard quarterbacks say, you know, it's harder. I remember Rich Gannon, who's a buddy of mine, Rich Gannon. I remember talking to him when he was at Delaware, and Delaware runs this really weird wing tee, where you have all kinds of. It's kind of similar to what you see this whatever he called now that the Eagles run now, which is like
it's an option. It's an option.
Option type situation.
But the thing is that the NFL has sort of adopted a lot of the stuff that colleges did. It's gone both ways, and now everything is cyclical. I mean, now all of a sudden, if you look at what happened in free agency in the NFL, these moron GMs are spending $15 million on running backs. All of a sudden now it's going. It's like I don't get it. It's like okay,
because they have too much money. Their cap went up so much. Exactly. This league has so much money that now players who don't deserve it are getting paid for a change. That's why.
And quarterback is about as big of a position as you can get in any sport. Like, it really is. I mean, I think
goaltender, starting
pitcher. Quarterback, pitcher, goaltender, center, maybe, right? In basketball, I don't know, like in basketball, I would say center, perhaps. I don't know that, like, the real big guys that are so
changed now. So maybe it's not center anymore, but it's still, if you have a great center, you're in good shape, like the Sixers. Yeah. So, I get it.
Yeah, so I mean that's interesting though, and I mean this one guy, who signed with today? Somebody signed, right?
The Eagles,
They traded for him. They swapped.
Yeah, they swapped picks. Yeah,
the Eagles got rid of the they lost their running back, right?
Yeah, but then they picked up Barkley from the Giants. So
now their running back DeAndre Swift, who did pretty well,
liked him.
Only he's getting paid like $7 million a year for 3 years wherever he went. And
I'm surprised they didn't hold on to him.
And they paid like double for Barkley, and I'm a little dubious about that.
I think they paid double just to piss off the Giant fans.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping they would keep him. I really was hoping they would. Anyway, let's get going here with football. It's hockey. Hockey. Right? Hello, Hockey World. This is Friday, March 15th, 2024.
I'm Michael Agello, and I have absolutely no idea why I'm wearing green today.
I'm Russ Cohen, and you're usually great.
I'm Eklund and half Irish, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. That's right, my mother's family side, we're Giffords. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world, and also now to give you the projected standings. And we got a little update on what's happened there. We're not going to talk about the whole show. It's not going to be the whole show because I know we used a lot of the whole show last time because there's only 2 games tonight.
Well, Why don't we save it for like the second half, because there's some new stuff that.
We start there. Yeah, start there, Mike. Go ahead. You throw it. Give us some new stuff.
Okay. We'll start with the expansion talk.
Right.
Because in the last, say, 72 hours, a couple different bids in the Atlanta area have popped up. The one is the group that is, I guess, pointed by Anson Carter, former NHL Anson Carter.
Yep.
And the other one, I can't remember the name of the group, but that's the one that is it Kaiser?
No, Krause.
Okay. Yeah. So you have two groups in Atlanta competing for potentially one bid. And of course, I'll be the one who rains on the parade here. I don't think Atlanta should get another team after striking out twice. I mean, you can't hold it against Atlanta for something that happened, 45 years ago. But it was 2011 that they failed in Atlanta?
They're just 30 minutes outside of the city. So I think there's a chance. I mean, I've only been to Atlanta a couple times, but look, I don't think it's the best sports city on its own. Right. They've gotten a lot of transplants since 2011, Mike. So I think.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, Elliot Friedman was talking about this on their podcast today, and he's basically saying, well, what's changed is, it used to be that the excuse was, well, a lot of Eastern transplants have gone down to the Southeast, gone down to Atlanta. Now it's, well, a lot of people are now like from the area and they're sort of ingrained. Right. Okay. You have it one way or the other. Either they're a bunch of, Georgians, or it's a bunch of Northeastern transplants. Either way, it didn't work 10 years ago, 11 years ago. So what's the difference? They want $2 billion worth of expansion money. That's what they want.
Well, that's part of it. But the Gwinnett Gladiators do draw. They don't draw like an NHL team, but they do draw, and they have a good following. And I think they're kind of working off of that.
I get it, Russ, but it's like, if there was the Milwaukee Admirals have been a successful AHL team, does that mean they should expand to Milwaukee? Well, maybe they haven't tried in Milwaukee before, but they've.
I wouldn't be against Milwaukee, but they don't have any infrastructure. This Krause group has an arena that could be up in 27.
Right.
Ready to play. People go in 2027.
And my issue here, Eck, is, okay, they're going to go to Atlanta whether I think it's a good idea or not. Okay?
That's true. I agree on that one.
Right, and they probably will, because they won't listen to somebody who actually knows what the fuck they're talking about.
No,
but the issue here is they're seeing dollar signs, and that's fine. I mean, if the league wants to make money and they want to go to big TV markets, I get it. I understand it. The thought was, okay, TNT is Turner, and they're based in Atlanta, and that would be a positive. Okay, fine, then whatever. Straighten out your own house before you decide you're going to expand. And that cluster bleep that's going on in Arizona right now, until they get that straightened out, they shouldn't even be thinking of expansion. Not a chance in hell.
Well,
they want money. The owners want money, Mike. That's it.
I understand that, Russ, but
Mike, Arizona's situation doesn't have anything to do with it. Like,
sure it does. Sure it does.
No, not for that. I disagree, but let's talk Arizona for a minute, because here, the long play on this one is
the really long play.
It's a really long play, because now so they're allowed to have an auction, but they have to advertise it publicly, because this is how the government works, and it has to run for 10 weeks. So now that's pushing them till June. Then they get to bid on it, and then they get to see if they're the winning bidder. I'm telling you, by the time we're at the draft, they should announce who the new city is, and don't let those draft picks dress up in Arizona Coyotes jerseys, because that's what the NBA did with Seattle. Like they had the Kevin Durant, rookie card in Seattle, and he played for Oklahoma. He never played for Seattle.
Right.
We'll make that same mistake.
This is the thing with Arizona. I mean, okay, again, my point of view aside, because I think it's been a disgrace of an organization for more than a decade. It should have been moved in 2010 or 2011. Okay. If you're going to expand to 34 or 36 teams, which is what they're talking about maybe down the road, okay, you cannot charge I mean, you can charge whatever you want, but honestly, if I'm an owner if I'm a potential expansion owner, the first thing I'm doing is trying to get the Arizona Coyotes before I'm going to pay $1 billion or $1.5 billion or $2 billion. I'm going to get a franchise that's already established, that's got a ton of draft picks over the next 3 years. I'm trying to get that franchise, and if I'm the NHL and they keep stringing this shell game along over and over and over again, I'm sorry. I'm yanking the apparently in the league rules, you can yank the franchise out of the hands of that ownership. Let them sue you. You've mismanaged this for years.
Yeah, but they're not going to do that because it's messy. But
well, the other thing is though, the owners, the people who are looking to buy teams, it's actually more appealing to have an expansion team, Mike, because with the rules of the NHL's put in place. I mean, look what's happened in Seattle, and look how much better Seattle and Vegas are than Arizona. I mean, like
there are good players in Arizona, and they've got 20 draft picks over the next 3 years. That's an attractive commodity there.
Yeah, but don't you think you put together? Do you think they'll be better than an expansion team would be?
Yes.
I don't know.
Here's a scenario though. Here's a scenario. Because Atlanta's pretty close to being approved, if the NHL wanted to, and because the Arizona Coyotes are pretty close to being out because of what's going on.
Yeah.
They could just take Arizona, move them somewhere temporarily. Hey, you go play in Kansas City, go play in Omaha, whatever, one of those rinks for a year or two, and make that an expansion franchise, the next expansion, and then tell Arizona, if you ever get your stuff together, you can have a franchise back, like the Cleveland Browns.
I don't have a problem with going back to Arizona once they got their crap together. Once they got a building, once a building in an area where we know it'll work, like downtown Phoenix or Tempe, not Glendale. We know that Scottsdale is never going to approve it. I know people who live in Scottsdale. They will never approve a building in Scottsdale. No, never. You've got two NHL type arenas and the NHL NBA arenas in the Phoenix area, and you're going to build a third one. That's no way. So I mean, once they got their crap together, then fine. Because I know the motivation of the league. Arizona, Phoenix is a top 10 TV market. Atlanta is a top 5 TV market. They want to be in those markets when the new CBA is put together and when the new TV contract is put together, because that means more money for the league and it also means more jobs for players. I get it. That's fine. But get your whole house in order before you decide you're going to expand.
But Mike, I mean that makes sense on a logical level, but the reality is, like, they don't know that these people are going to be there with this kind of money later. Like, by the time
they could go another sport.
Right, and also they could screw this up with Arizona to the point where these other owners are like, nah, I don't want to do it. They really are. Like, the fact that something is happening with other owners is pretty remarkable. It just shows you how successful the league is right now.
Right. Well, what I'm saying, Ak, is you might be right. They may want to strike while the iron's hot. Then you resolve the Arizona situation, which has been pushed and pushed and pushed. Resolve it quickly. Either set a deadline. Either you have to get the tract of land to build a building on it by June the 1st, or the franchise is being sold. Do what the U.S. government just did with TikTok. Have them, force them to sell. If we're passing legislation, you're going to force them to sell TikTok. Force the Arizona Coyotes ownership to sell that franchise at a fair rate.
Yeah, well, I think my plan would do that, and I think I've heard other people throw that around, and it sort of makes sense. But the other problem is, so if let's say it gets to 34 teams,
right,
in the future, it gets to 34. There is going to be a player problem, and I'll tell you why. Because right now in the league, if you look around, like I looked around, in 2022, the percentage of players from NCAA hockey was 54% in the NHL. Now, of the 54%, you would probably say 3% are top 6, maybe more, and maybe another 5% are top 4 defensemen. There's definitely more defensemen than forwards. And so you're going to have a lot of teams, not a lot of teams. These other teams, they're going to get some players, but having a number one center, having a number one defenseman, those things aren't going to happen because there's probably, I would say, 5 teams right now that don't have number one centers, and there's probably 7 or 8 that don't have number one defensemen, and there's probably even we would say 4 or 5 that don't have number one goalies. So it's going to be hard to make up that deficit. The only way I see them making up the deficit is for some reason Russia opens up and then KHLers can just come over at will. If they're able to do that as free agents, that might be able to fill the gap. But otherwise,
what you're looking at here is, okay, the top 2 or 3 players on AHL teams will be in the NHL.
Yeah.
Right. And probably I would say maybe 15 to 20 players from the SHL, from the Liga, until the KHL opens up, which is not, is in the unforeseen future because of everything that's going on right now. I mean, you're not going to get much out of the KHL. So the league is going to be watered down. The league isn't going to be as good, but the level of play won't be as good. But it'll
take a while to get back to the level of play because there's going to be a lot of guys that
there'll be more opportunity, but
opportunity will be there. Yeah.
But Russ, this is the comparison I made, which is to some European soccer leagues like the English Premier League, where you have, and the only difference is you're not going to have relegation in the NHL. You're going to have 2 divisions basically. You're going to have the haves and the have-nots, and the disparity will get greater because some of these teams. You're going to have more. You're going to have like more sellers at the deadline. You're going to have a more of a disparity of talent level.
Why do you say that?
Why?
More disparity, just because you're bringing more players in. I mean, to me, there is a level of which, I mean, the NHL can sustain a certain, and what you're saying, Russ, is true. But at the same time, the whole concept of first line defenseman, first line forwards, or whatever, top pairing defenseman, is all so subjective. I mean, it's like,
it's a little subjective, sure.
Well, it's not subjective with number one goaltenders. I mean, I think
the reality is that number one just means number one compared to everyone else. So no matter what you have, you always have a number one. You always have like the best 2 defensemen on a team. We're talking about the caliber of the player act, not the caliber. I get that, but it's not that. I know. I mean, I understand like what we're talking about. I completely understand the difference. What I'm saying, but at the same time, it's really hard to say. Like, superstars. We're not going to have any more superstars, but we have more. We have more superstars in the league now than we've ever had in the NHL right now, in my opinion.
In fact, you might have. Here's an example of a greater disparity. When the American League expanded in 1961,
right,
and the LA Angels in there, and the Kansas, I think it was the. There was another expansion, and that's when Roger Maris had 61 home runs because you had a bunch of AAA pitchers pitching in major leagues, and it made it'll make Austin Matthews a 75 goal scorer instead of a 70 goal scorer.
Yeah, and you get defensemen that aren't as good as necessarily, so sometimes you're going to have some people.
Colt 45s now. I'm not sure.
Yes, that's right, Colt 45s, which is now
I mean, I'm not saying the league will be bad, but what I am saying is. There is a watering down process. I remember when the league expanded when I was a kid, there definitely was a watered down process then because scouting wasn't what it is now. But the problem is if scouting stays at the same percentages that guys are going to hit at, there's going to be a problem.
But when we were kids, Russ, the United States of America was not a hockey player feeder. Like the reality is like the biggest country in the world for this kind of thing didn't exist. For hockey, now, I mean, we've definitely, I mean, with U.S. hockey getting better and better and better, it's more than kept up with it.
But what's the dirty secret of USA Hockey? How many of those are former Canadians, kids of Canadians? A lot.
Yeah. Sure, but it doesn't matter because it's just another place where we're developing. So it's more places to develop, like more teams, more places to play. All that eventually equates to more better players.
But they're developing around they're developing around NHL cities where NHL players had kids. St. Louis, Arizona. I mean, Southern California. That's what's going on. Now, my point is here, and we know that and then we'll get off this and talk about some of the games last night. we know that the expansion rules changed to make it more beneficial for teams to be competitive. I mean, Vegas was competitive right away. Seattle was competitive right away. A lot better than what happened with Minnesota and San Jose. But okay, so say you protect like the first expansion, 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie, or I think it was 8 players and 1 goalie.
Right.
Okay, you're talking about, like Seattle had, a bunch of third liners, a bunch of Yanni Gourds, and a bunch of 3-4 defensemen being on that team, and Vince Dunn is the number 1 on Seattle, and he'd be a number 3 or 4 on any other team.
Plus, I'm also putting up my guys with bloated salaries that I'd like to get rid of, pushing them forward and hoping that they take one of them.
Right. You're right. And remember, Seattle didn't bite on those like Vegas did, or other teams didn't offer up first-round picks to take guys with bloated contracts. And that's the thing. It's like, so, I mean, okay, again, the NHL is going to do what the NHL wants to do. But I think until they straighten out the problem franchises, and I think right now the problem is one. I mean, Florida was on the ropes a couple years ago when you had 8,000 people on a Tuesday night. Now they're one of the best teams in the league, and they're filling their seats. But Arizona is a disgrace of an organization. They continue to be. They're an embarrassment to the league. I don't know how Gary Bettman can put his face out at these press conferences at the Stanley Cup final without answering the question of what are you.
Because every franchise except the Coyotes is worth $1 billion or more. That's why.
Okay.
Well, no, but I'm saying without answering definitively what the solution to Arizona is. He walked around it like
it's
like
the
anything.
Same thing with Winnipeg. They never gave you an answer until after it happened.
You're not going to know this until it happens. I mean, you'll know suddenly they'll say they're playing in Salt Lake City next year. You're going to hear that all of a sudden. It's not going to be like something that comes out of we knew Atlanta was trying to be sold. Like we knew that there were people like trying, like, remember that was the Jim Balsillie time period, so Balsillie was trying to buy Atlanta and the NHL wouldn't let him. Remember that happening? The NHL back.
He wanted to move him to Hamilton. That's why.
Right, because he was going to move to Hamilton, but he wasn't willing to move him to Winnipeg. So
back when Blackberry was the thing. Remember
he tried to buy tried to buy Nashville to move him to Hamilton. He tried to buy Pittsburgh to move him to Hamilton.
Yeah.
He tried Atlanta to move him to Hamilton. Why? Because Buffalo and Toronto didn't want him to move to Hamilton, and then it was Kitchener, Waterloo. Okay, then you're and that's again the talk about a second team in Toronto. It's never happening.
No.
Never.
But the thing is, my thought for that other city, because Salt Lake will definitely get a team.
Yes.
Atlanta is going to get a team.
Yep.
And my thought for the other city would be something like Portland, because then I think they would do a good job with that whole Portland, Vancouver, Seattle. It all fits.
I would love, and from what we heard, I would love for them to go to Quebec City, but I was told by somebody they're never going to Quebec City.
Right.
So and that's a disgrace, because we heard the NHL said, "Go ahead, build the building. We'll if you build it, we will come." Okay.
There's not a never with Quebec City. Like that's not never.
Right. They've never closed the door. They just are like.
I actually think that a lot of that has to do with Quebec itself. What I've been told has been like the idea of the money, the dollar being down, and all different kinds of things happening. Squash that, or else it would have happened by now. I think the NHL, if the dollar rebounds in Canada and the right ownership group comes, has no problem going back to Quebec. I don't think there's any. I think they will go back in a heartbeat. I really do.
Now the from the games last night, the 2 things, the 3 things that we should touch on, and they're all sort of intertwined, is the downfall of the Detroit Red Wings, the downfall of the Philadelphia Flyers, and all of a sudden the upswing of the Buffalo Sabres. And I saw Detroit on Tuesday,
and the New York Islanders upswing,
and I saw the Islanders yesterday. Well, I'll give you my critique on the Islanders too. Here's my critique on the Islanders. Now
I disagree with that.
With Detroit, they don't have a goalie. Alex Lyon, the situation, this is the major miscalculation that Steve Yzerman made. Husso is hurt again. They have Alex Lyon and James Reimer, so they have no goalie. Dylan Larkin is probably a week away. That's some of the reports. They've lost 7 in a row. They lost to Arizona last night. I'm not saying they're done. I'm not saying it's over there, but they're in a situation where they're in the 18-wheeler has gone off the cliff.
Yeah, they're in a very bad spot.
Now, I think Philadelphia is better off than they are.
Hold on. Here's what I want to say about Detroit, because people are right. I picked them for dead last. They're not dead last. But I also didn't pick them for the playoffs. And when they got Kane, I didn't pick them for the playoffs for the simple reason that Mike is saying I knew their goaltending wasn't going to be there. And the thing is, Kane's having a pretty good year, but Larkin runs that team. And if they don't have Larkin, it's more than over. They're just dead.
No, you're right. You're right. Larkin he's such a cod that they all run through.
And Dan B in the chat is like, Lyon had a .926 save percentage up until about 2 weeks ago. That's the point. The point is, that's not sustainable. I mean, it's Alex Lyon. He's become Alex Lyon. I mean, I'm not disparaging the guy, but he's a backup.
We're not disparaging him.
Yeah, he's a backup. He's an NHL backup, and he had a great.
Be like a 1A, Mike. Like he has proven himself to be like.
No. That's the miscalculation here, Ike. He's a 1B.
He's a 1B.
He's a 1B, and Florida Panthers had to thank their lucky stars that they had him last year at the right time of the year. They got hot for 6 weeks and into the playoffs, but at a certain point they had to go back to Bobrovsky, and they did. Now, as a 1B, having a 1A, he's great. But he's had to be a 1A because Husso got hurt. And that's what Yzerman failed to do. He didn't go out and get a goaltender at the deadline. So now they're screwed. I mean, I don't know if they can pull out of this. Now, Russ, you were at Philadelphia, Toronto yesterday. I mean,
so
Philadelphia.
A couple things.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, and I saw it. I didn't get to read the article by Jordan Hall, but the first thing that stuck on me was they're now giving Couturier a diminished role, right? And so he's still on the fourth line, but you're going up against Austin Matthews, Zach, and they decided they were going to put the Hathaway,
believe that,
Ryan Paling, Noah Cates line up against Matthews. Right now, the thing is, when the Leafs get the first goal, they're 23-8-4, something like that.
Right.
So you basically started off the game with that line against the Matthews line. Boom, first goal. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we go and say, again, you couldn't send Adam Jennings back any quicker than they did when a week ago they needed him. They couldn't find him because when they sent him back, they tried to bring him back and he was nowhere. And so now you send him back quicker than you needed to. And you see what happens when Mark Stahl and Eric Johnson are in the lineup at the same time. Eric Johnson, I think, was a -4. If you watch him, his mobility is just not there. And he can make some passes and do little things. And every once in a while, Mark Stahl can get up the ice. But if Mark Stahl gets up the ice, the Leafs certainly showed him he can't get back the other way.
He stays up the ice. That's the problem.
Right.
And I couldn't believe it. I'll go out on a limb here because he played 50 some odd games with the Sabres before he got traded. There was not one game with the Sabres that he played over 19 minutes. He played 19 minutes and 8 seconds for the Flyers. That's obscene. I mean, 13 minutes for a veteran guy like that.
Right.
And if you're going to put him and Stahl in the same pairing, having him on the bottom pairing and having him penalty kill. But I'm looking at the numbers here. I mean, Zamula 21 minutes, Sanheim 21 minutes, York 22. They played Adder only 15. It's like, holy moly. It's like the misappropriation of minutes.
I know. Adder's got the young legs and they're playing the old guys. But here's the other thing. Even with all of that being off, I did some digging. And again, we don't know what Sam Ersson is. We don't know if he's a 1A. But I did look at him. He has given up 8 goals from long distance. And if you noticed last night, and I conferred this with somebody who's pretty much at ice level, that's where the Leafs were shooting from half the time.
Yeah.
And like that Bertuzzi, I got to tell you, that Bertuzzi deflection, that was the furthest deflection I've seen in like 5 years. But the point was, they were shooting from out there, Matthews included, not only because Ersson's a little off when they come in that way, but because some of the Flyers like Tippett and other guys get in the line of sight of the Flyers goalie, and that is a weakness of the team now that other teams have figured out.
And that was the reason for the Liljegren goal at the end of near the end of the first period. He was, Urson didn't even see it, and I thought they were going to pull him right at that moment, but they didn't pull him until the beginning of after the end of the first period.
If you're going to be a Tortorella team that's going to block shots, you're going to get in the way of the goalie. Like there's no.
Right, he shouldn't have tried to block as many against the Leafs because they're walking around them.
That's why I'm not a big fan of this like block 100 shots a game.
I agree.
Coaching, I think it wears down players. It kills players' careers. I think it really hurts them long term. It's a real short term.
I mean, Nick Seeler is a perfect example. He can't get on the ice now because of that last block, and he's leading the league in block shots.
Right. So I mean, without Seeler and Drysdale, I think they're in deep trouble.
And
although
Stoker can play a little.
Right. Yeah. Although this is the other thing. So, I mean, the Sabres have like a 5 or 6% chance of making the playoffs. I mean, they're 3 points out of a playoff spot with the Red Wings and the Islanders. But they, they're 3 point, like I said, 3 points, but every other team has games in hand. So that's where, and if they don't beat Detroit tomorrow, then I think their chances are basically like 1%. I give them
Washington, just so you know. So Ted Starkey, friend of the show, he's been on before.
Yeah.
He tweeted about a week ago. He studies Washington and the Islanders and a few teams. He noticed on the schedule, everybody they were chasing, they had more games against those teams than anybody else who's chasing like the Flyers or a wild card spot.
Yep.
So even though they're a -30, which is illogical, they still can gain more ground with those wins.
Yeah, they're still in the projected standings as the final wild card right now. Even at this point, after the couple days of adjustments.
Right, but let me finish my point on the Islanders, then we can go to the Buzz. Okay, so the Islanders, since Patrick Waugh took over, have been much better. But in watching them last night, they're a one-line offensive team. They've loaded Brock Nelson on the line with Horvat and Barzal. And if you're successful enough to shut that line down, which is a tough, because you got 2 really good players on there, and Brock Nelson's not too bad himself.
No, he's a good player.
And then if you can't shut them down, then it's a problem. If you can't shut them down, that's all they got. I mean, they have Pierre Engvall on the second line. Pierre Engvall is a third, maybe good fourth liner and an okay third liner, but not a second liner. Anders Lee played 13 minutes last night. And I made the mistake this morning. I said Kyle Palmieri didn't play. Well, he played 20 minutes. That's how badly he played. I didn't even notice him. So it's like, I mean, this is the problem. They have one of the best goaltenders in the league in the NHL in Sorokin, and he made an unbelievable save yesterday. They've got one of the best young defensemen in the league in Dobson. Their defense is maybe 3 defensemen deep. Their bottom pairing was Sebastian Aho and Mike Riley, and their fourth line is terrible. They're not deep enough.
But they have enough guys with playoff experience that just might be able to get in.
Got enough firepower, enough defense, and a goalie that they could be a wild card team. There's no question about it.
They may make it, but they're not good. And
the other thing I forgot to bring up, Heck, I don't know if you did watch. There was where 3 Flyers were without their sticks. They all broke.
Yeah, I saw that.
On one shift one shift on the Matthew Nyes goal, and I've never seen that. Where all of a sudden 3 guys,
3 players like
around, and all they're doing is trying to block in a shot.
It was insane. It was crazy.
No, I'm not advocating 3 players going to the bench to get a stick at the same time. But when somebody breaks a stick and it's a 5-on-4, just go to the bench and get a stick instead of because your team is already shorthanded because you can't do squat without a stick.
Right.
I saw a team one time. I forget where it was. I think it was Pittsburgh. I saw Pittsburgh at practice during the playoffs, and they actually practiced what would happen if you broke a stick when you're penalty killing.
Oh,
and and basically the gist of it was, that they would allow, if in certain situations, to, like what you said, Mike, to let it be a 5-on-3 for a second, like just allow that to happen, like shift into a triangle from a square. One guy goes to the bench and gets the stick and gets back because
smart thing to do.
But
nobody went to the bench from the Flyers. Nobody.
Right. On a PK, I can understand why the guy would stand out there because he could still block the shot. But 5-on-5, if it's 10 seconds of you being shorthanded, go to the bench and get it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I'm definitely with you on that. I agree completely. So let's talk about some of the other games from last night, though, because there were were big. It was a big night. I'm going to bring up my little thing here, my notes over here. It was definitely a big night, and a lot of good scores. Sorry, I just lost my
Some comeback.
Yeah, some comebacks. So the big games last night, as far as upsets go, and let me guys get you filled in on the what's happening with the Hockey Buzztron right now.
Mm-hmm.
Doing pretty well. So far we have a at this point since we talked, the St. Louis Blues moved into a wild card spot based on it, which is interesting because the Blues have been playing well. And there's definitely a chance. I think the Blues have a real
good year. Like I predicted that. I thought he would.
Yeah. Now they have a serious shot. Last night, the team that benefited the most from last night was the Devils, though, winning that game against Dallas.
Right.
That definitely that added like 4 or 5 points to them. Still has them out of a wild card spot. But
I mean, honestly,
mm-hmm.
I think the Sabres have a better chance than the Blues. The Blues are 6 points out.
They are, but their schedule's very, and they have some games at hand too. They were in a situation where they have a serious shot. So right now the Sabres, I'm looking at the thing right now, and the still pretty much
take the Blues over the Sabres, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah,
Jordan Binnington. That's why.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Do I think the Blues have a higher percentage chance of making it? Well, because the Sabres have played the most games of any team that they're competing against, I would say the Blues have a better chance. I mean, I'm not saying Luukkonen is better than Binnington because Binnington's won a Stanley Cup, but Luukkonen has the best goals against in the NHL since January 1st, and they're riding Luukkonen. He's played, I think, 23 of the last 24 games. So
Binnington knows what it is to be ridden like for
yes,
that's the only difference.
But the thing I look at, Eck, is the fact that getting, they're not going to finish in the top 3 in the Central because they're 16 points behind Winnipeg, and the team with the second wild card is Vegas, unless they collapse, which is possible because they've done it before.
Yeah, I don't see them. I mean, I see Vegas not collapsing. I mean, at least the projections have Vegas taking that third spot in the West, in the Pacific, but not.
I pray for that, by the way.
Nashville and St. Louis is the wild cards. Predators are making a real good case for it. Like the Predators are definitely.
They really are. I got to give them credit.
Yeah, they're really getting almost in a solid wild card spot now. It's interesting.
If I'm the Los Angeles Kings, I'm throwing games at the end of the season just to prevent playing Edmonton in the first round because they played them 2 years ago.
So here's the thing, Mike. The other day I was listening to Sirius, and Ken Holland pretty much admitted last year that they played like that at the end of the season to get the matchup that they wanted in the playoffs. And guess how that worked out?
Yeah. It doesn't.
They beat LA.
No, but it didn't work out long term. And so now they said,
eventually they're going to play a good team.
No, but my point is, and I think I agree with this now, you shouldn't worry about who you're playing. You really shouldn't.
Well, okay. Let's just say you can burn incense and pray to the gods that you play a certain team. Like in the Toronto Maple Leafs situation, as I wrote today on Hockey Buzz, they're completely out of control because they're stuck in third place, and whoever wins first place, they're going to play the second place team. The difference between Florida and Boston is death by hanging and death by firing squad, because they're going to be a long shot against both of them because they just don't match up with either one of them. So
the projected standings, Mike. Let's go to that. In the top 3 teams in that division right now has Boston finishing with 117,
right?
Florida finishing with 115,
and
Toronto finishing with 115.
No.
So Toronto's not that far out of it, honestly. When I don't know why it has Toronto finishing that high. I understand, but it must be there. I haven't looked deeply at their schedule.
Like the last 6 games to do something like that.
I know.
And the news. Well, okay, you have to adjust it for this. The news coming out. Mitch Marner may come back in a few games, but they're not going to watch him because they're stuck in third place. But Kalle Järnkrok got hurt last night against Philadelphia. And now he's out week to week, so that just thins thins their forward lines even more.
And Lubushkin's banged up because he went off for a little while and came back too.
And they're probably going to sit him out for a game or two because they need him for the playoffs. That means Simone Benoit gets back in the lineup. So this is what I mean, Ak. I mean, they're 10 points behind Florida right now to make up 10 points.
Yeah, no, that would be something. I agree. I mean, they must have a very favorable schedule to teams to their matchups. And that doesn't, like I said before, it doesn't mean they're going to win all those games. It's just that they're
the Vegas Golden Knights, because I've lost faith in them. I don't think they're doing anything this year.
Yeah, they are right now. We have them in the third spot in their division, but not by a ton. So let's see. Vegas is. I'm trying to get this to work here. Sorry,
hold on.
Here, bring it up, Mike, if you could.
Yeah, I'm bringing it up right now.
So Vegas has Vegas with 103 points. So they would finish. The next closest team would be.
You have Vegas at 103 and LA finishing out of the playoffs.
Finishing out of the playoffs. So no, but that's really close though. It's super close. I mean, St. Louis is 94. Yeah. Minnesota and LA both finishing at 93. The Wild also are still in it, and it's like people aren't taking that into account.
No, they are. I mean, I know they are. But I mean, the Wild make it
sounds like I think the Wild kind of wrote this season off. And the way they treated the trade deadline.
Yeah. But if the Wild make it, that means the Kings don't, right? I think that's
the
way it works.
Right. I think that would happen to him that way. And the Kings, it's not a guarantee. I mean, so last night, looking at the games that mattered last night, when we got right, the Buzztron did predict the Coyotes would beat the Red Wings, which is interesting. It got that one right. And it got the Hurricanes beating the Florida Panthers. That was a really strong game by the Hurricanes and a really tired Panthers team. You can tell that Panthers team, after what they did to beat Dallas and that comeback, they were spent last night. They could see that.
I'd like to call into question the schedule makers in the NHL for not just that one, but for the Rangers playing Tampa. Apparently, the Rangers are playing a stretch of 5 games in 7 days. Yeah. That should not happen in the NHL.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah. That's patently absurd. That doesn't even happen in the AHL, let alone because in the AHL, if they play 3 games in a row, they have big enough rosters that they rotate 6 or 7 guys out of the lineup. You should not be playing 5 games in 7 days, especially down the stretch in the NHL. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. But I'll tell you the biggest game. Yeah, the biggest game was the Avs comeback over the Canucks. And I got to tell you, that's why I think the Avs are the leader for the Cup right now. I do.
Yeah, they got that. You remember we talked about that. It had the Canucks winning that game, and we were all like, "Oh, that kind of surprising." But then I'm 3-0 in the third. I'm like, "Oh, it's looking pretty good."
Right.
Yeah. Sure enough. There you go. That was something. I know. And but the Devils beating the Stars last night, big one.
And that was interesting, because I know someone who covered the game.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'm a little worried about the Stars, the way the Devils were able to come back in that game.
Yeah.
Especially since Jake Allen was shaky early."
Yeah.
So I don't feel great about Dallas anymore. I don't.
I've had issues with this all year. I mean, I really they at times they look like a world beat. They are so all over the map. Like they look incredible, but they are so streaky.
I mean, I'll say this as a general statement when it comes to the Central. Whoever is the 2-3 in that division is not making it out of the division. Because whoever wins that series, say Colorado wins the Central and it's Dallas, Winnipeg in the first round.
Right.
Whoever the winner of that series, they're not going to have enough gas to beat Colorado. They won't, because Colorado will match up against Nashville in the first round, and Nashville's has has done more than I expected them to.
Yeah,
but they'll beat them.
That's a perfect example of when good teams get eliminated.
Yeah. I mean, Dallas, Winnipeg is a bloodbath.
It is
an absolute bloodbath. So
it is unfortunate. And I honestly think that I hate the fact that the Predators are going to have to face Colorado. That's the one team they match up horribly against Colorado and always have, and they play them in the playoffs quite a bit.
But I am praying to the Almighty that it's Vegas, Edmonton in the first round, because Edmonton will lose that series.
That's a really good shot. I mean, right now, according to my projected standings, Vancouver and Edmonton are just 1 point apart at the end.
Yeah.
Vancouver would win the division by 1 point. it's close. I mean, it'll be close right down to the end.
Here's what I worry about.
It's a 9-point gap. I just, God.
Here's what I worry about with Edmonton, though. What I worry about is they've been on such a roll that what happens if they get into a 3-game series and they go down 0-2 or they're down 3-1? Because all of a sudden, because they haven't had any other turmoil other than the beginning of the season, and I kind of wonder now what will happen if they get turmoil in the playoffs.
They are another team like Dallas that's on or off, and I agree with you. It's going to be really. I mean, it feels like. I mean, everybody sits there and says, can't be Draisaitl McDavid, but it's also Hyman. You got to remember the guy's got 50 goals.
Oh, no, Hyman's got 46 goals. I mean,
so it's not just Draisaitl and McDavid anymore, in a big way that way. So they have a lot of they've got a lot more balance than they've had before. I'm not a fan of their goaltending still. That's my issue with them for sure. With Skinner, with Edmonton, I'm not a big guy.
No, but there's a lot of interesting talk because Campbell's doing well now, and I don't think Campbell's coming up. I don't. But the problem is, people in Edmonton, when they cover the team, they end up talking about all their goalies. I was listening to it on Sirius, and it's like they do really need to settle on Skinner and just leave him alone.
They do.
That's their only chance.
Bring up Olivier Rodrigue so he can be the starting goalie in the playoffs. I mean, would you please shut up?
Campbell is a lot like who's the goalie they had right before?
Go with Calvin Pickard, folks.
Right before Campbell, and Mike Smith. Skinner reminds me of Mike Smith in some ways. Like there's certain parts of his game that remind me of Mike Smith. Not completely, but
he's like Mike Smith's son.
He's like Mike Smith. He's
Well, Mike Smith is 40 some odd years old. So if he had a son when he was 19, now he's as old as Skinner.
They had this on the edge game that can be really good or they can be really bad, and it's back and forth. And I think when a team like Edmonton that's such an offensive juggernaut, they need a goalie that's just not going to lose it for them. Really that's really what they need. And that's why I've always felt better goalie.
Defense. I don't know how their defense is going to play. They do have a physical presence on D. That's good. But I don't know when they have to match up against other teams if they could just go with their 4 and not have to play their bottom pairing that much. That's what I worry about them.
Yeah, that's a legit worry. I totally agree with you.
Wait. Are you talking about Edmonton?
Edmonton, yeah.
No. I mean,
they're fine. Their bottom pairing's not good.
Their defense is 3 defensemen deep. It's not even 4.
I'll give him 4. But I'm just saying that's a worry for me.
But when you have because Cody Ceci is terrible. When you have Cody Ceci, Kulak, and Vincent Desharnais as your bottom half of your defense, you've got 3 defensemen.
Bouchard is okay. I do.
Bouchard is excellent. Okay. Ekholm is a defensive all-star. Yeah. And Darnell Nurse he's a top 15 defenseman. But the rest of Russ, in the playoffs, Darnell Nurse is going to be playing 26 minutes a night.
Absolutely, and he's going to be really physical, and Bouchard will be more physical. But I do worry about them actually just playing defense because they're not going to score 5-6 goals a game. There's no team in the league that they're going to score 5-6 goals against. That's
why, and honestly, it's like what Vegas did against Edmonton last year. They got physical with McDavid. They got physical with, and it's tough to get physical with Draisaitl, but I think they took Draisaitl off his game. He got pissed off a lot against Vegas. Yeah. They were annoying him. And that's if you can limit McDavid, which is what they did, you can beat Edmonton. And I think if that's a matchup, if Stone doesn't come back, if he doesn't magically come back at the beginning of the first round, then Edmonton might have a good chance of beating Vegas because he's one of the 4 legs of a table for the Golden Knights.
Yeah, I want to make a plea to the hockey world too. Here's my plea. Stop writing about where you think Sidney Crosby might end up. I'm leaving. He's got another year on his deal, and he could just walk away, or maybe he turns into Mario and goes year to year and sees if the team is getting better, or if not, he'll just drop off. But I don't think getting traded is high on his list.
I don't know who dreamed up this asinine rumor, but there was a rumor that came out. I don't know if it came out of Toronto, but it was a rumor of, Sidney Crosby's going to get traded to the Maple Leafs for Mitch Marner. I mean,
wow.
First of all, shut up. There's a 10-year difference in age, so that's not happening. And second of all, Sidney Crosby doesn't want to go anywhere.
Right.
He doesn't. There's talk
And
about
then
him
Stan
sending.
Fischler, I see a headline, Sidney Crosby, maybe he'll go to New York. And it's like, why would he do
Oh,
that?
please.
Why would Sidney Crosby go to the Rangers? He wouldn't. He would not.
So let's get through some. So far the Hockey Buzz Tron, by the way, is still over. It had a bad night. That night we talked about last time. It went 1-3 that night. With that one big loss when the Avs came from behind. But it has been. Last night went 7-5. So far, this year 15-11. So it's at 58%. But let's talk about some weird games this weekend that could come up though. Tonight is there are two really pretty obvious games.
Yes.
I mean, LA should beat Chicago. Winnipeg should beat Edmonton. It has both of those that's happening. But then a lot of games this weekend. I'm going to just go through them real quickly, and we'll see if there are any are surprising. Buffalo over Detroit, the Islanders over Ottawa, Rangers over Pittsburgh, New Jersey over Arizona, Tampa over Florida. That is interesting, right? We talked about that one.
That's an interesting one.
Boston over Philly, San Jose over Columbus, Montreal over Calgary. That's a interesting one there. Toronto over Carolina. That's kind of wild too.
I would take Carolina now.
Not without Marner's not going to be in the lineup, so I would take Carolina.
Yeah, without Carolina playing, I agree.
And Toronto is wearing those hideous Toronto St. Pat's jerseys. So
right.
Yeah, with the big clover on it.
I own one of them. I like.
By the way,
no, the other ones are good. These are terrible.
It's my dad's 91st birthday on St. Patrick's Day.
Oh wow! Happy birthday, Mr. Cohen.
And his name is Danny, but he's not Irish, obviously.
That's obviously no. Dallas over LA, St. Louis over Minnesota, Colorado over Edmonton, Seattle over Nashville. There's a kind of bizarre one.
That's an interesting one.
Yep, Washington over.
Really hurt Nashville if they lost that game.
It would really hurt them. Washington over Vancouver.
But that's the thing. Washington is going to have to win a couple of these games where they surprise you, and maybe they will.
Yep, and then Sunday, the Islanders over the Rangers in overtime.
Wow,
that's a biggie. New Jersey over Vegas in overtime.
Oof.
Another biggie. So this is Sunday, Columbus over Winnipeg. Wow, there's another one.
Wow.
Sunday.
I don't believe that will happen. I can't.
Sunday is going crazy. San Jose over Chicago.
The Buzz Trund has been drinking too much Guinness.
Sunday. Yeah, it sounds like it did on Saturday night because it's Sunday. Now, next game on Sunday is Ottawa over Carolina. Whoa.
Wow.
Pittsburgh over Detroit. Okay, possible. St. Louis over Anaheim. And that's where we leave off. So there's some Sunday. If you're looking for some weird upset possible nights, Sunday's got some weird ones. But those are your weekend games.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep. It's gonna be. We'll see what happens. There's a lot going on. New Jersey's actually back into this thing from that win. It really helped
a little bit, not a lot. A little.
They're in it as much as Toronto, as much as Buffalo is.
Right.
I would say you're about right. Although it has been finishing a little like 4 or 5 points ahead of Buffalo. Anyway, that's all the time we have really for today. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you all on Monday.